My ex-wife cheated on me, then married my brother. Now she's cheating on him and he wants my help. I reluctantly agree and uncover a shocking truth about their son that turns our lives upside down. My 32M brother, 26M, married my ex-wife, 30F, and now wants my help after she cheated on him. I never thought I'd be in this situation, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. To understand how I got here, I need to start from the beginning. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota with my dad, Jack. My mom, Laura, passed away when I was 8 in a car accident. She was on her way to pick me up from school when a drunk driver hit her car. I remember waiting at school for hours, wondering why she was late. When my dad finally showed up, his face told me everything before he even said a word. The next few years were tough. Dad owned a hardware store in town, and he did his best to juggle running the business and raising me alone. He'd often bring me to the store after school, where I'd do my homework in the back office or help stack shelves. Looking back, I realize how much he struggled, but he always made sure I felt loved and cared for. When I was 12, Dad met Sarah at a grief support group. She was a widow with a 6-year-old son named Jake. Her husband had died of cancer a year earlier. Dad and Sarah connected over their shared experiences of loss and single parenthood. They started dating, and about a year later, they got married. At first, I wasn't thrilled about having a new mom and brother. I missed my mom terribly and didn't want anyone to replace her. I was also used to having Dad all to myself. Sarah was kind and patient with me, never pushing me to accept her as my mom. She'd make my favorite meals and help me with school projects, slowly winning me over with her gentle persistence. Jake was a quiet kid, always following me around like a lost puppy. He was small for his age and got picked on at school. I remember the day I found him crying in our backyard because some older kids had stolen his bike. Something in me snapped, and I marched down to the park, confronted the bullies, and got Jake's bike back. From that day on, I saw Jake as my responsibility, my little brother to protect. As we grew older, Jake and I became closer. I helped him with homework, taught him to ride a bike, and stood up for him when he was bullied at school. We'd spend summers fishing at the lake behind our house and winters building elaborate snow forts. By the time I left for college, Jake was my best friend. After graduating from the University of Minnesota with a law degree, I got a job at a prestigious firm in Minneapolis. That's where I met Melissa. She was a paralegal, smart as a whip with a quick wit that kept me on my toes. We started as friends, grabbing coffee during breaks and chatting about cases. Over time, our relationship evolved. Melissa was different from anyone I'd dated before. She was ambitious, with big dreams of becoming a top-tier lawyer herself. We'd spend hours discussing cases and legal strategies. She challenged me intellectually in a way no one else had. After 2 years of dating, I proposed on a weekend trip to Chicago. We got married 6 months later when I was 27. At first, everything was great. Melissa was the perfect wife, supportive, loving, fun to be around. She'd leave little notes in my briefcase to encourage me before big meetings. We'd have impromptu dance parties in our kitchen while cooking dinner. Life felt perfect. But about a year into our marriage, things started to change. It was subtle at first, a snide comment here, a dismissive gesture there. Melissa became increasingly critical of everything I did. She'd mock my clothes, saying I dressed like a small-town hick. She'd put me down in front of our friends, laughing about how clueless I was about fine dining or wine. If I confronted her about it, she'd twist things around and make me feel like I was the one at fault. She'd say I was too sensitive or that I couldn't take a joke. She started going out late with her work friends and being secretive with her phone. I had my suspicions, but no proof of cheating. During this time, Jake was 22 and in his final year of college at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He'd come home for breaks, and I noticed Melissa paying extra attention to him. She'd text him constantly and try to hang out with him alone. I overheard her once telling Jake how mature he was for his age, how he was wise beyond his years. I warned Jake about her, told him what she'd done to me. I explained how she could be manipulative and that her attention wasn't as innocent as it seemed. Jake promised he'd keep his distance. He seemed to understand, telling me, "Bros before hoes, right?" We laughed about it, and I thought that was the end of it. Things came to a head when I found texts on Melissa's phone from multiple guys. There were flirty messages, explicit photos, and plans to meet up. When I confronted her, she didn't even try to deny it. She just laughed and said I was too boring for her, that I couldn't satisfy her emotionally or physically. It felt like a punch to the gut. We filed for divorce shortly after. The process was messy and painful. Melissa fought for everything she could get, even though she was the one who cheated. By the time it was finalized, I felt drained and betrayed. A month after my divorce was finalized, I found out Jake and Melissa were dating. I was furious and felt so betrayed. I remembered all the times Jake had seen me broken down over Melissa's behavior, how he'd comforted me and promised to stay away from her. And now, here he was, dating the woman who had torn my life apart. When I confronted Jake, he just shrugged and said, "She's not your wife anymore, get over it." He tried to justify it, saying they had a real connection and that Melissa had changed. But I knew better. I could see the same look in his eyes that I'd had years ago. The blind infatuation that made him unable to see Melissa for who she really was. Our parents didn't see the problem either. They thought I was just jealous and bitter. Mom, Sarah, even said, "Maybe Melissa just wasn't the right fit for you, but she and Jake seem happy." It felt like a betrayal all over again. The people who were supposed to have my back were instead supporting the very thing that was tearing me apart. I couldn't stand to be around any of them after that. I cut contact with my family and focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my work, making partner at my law firm within 2 years. I bought a house in a quiet suburb and adopted a dog, Max, from the local shelter. On the surface, my life looked great, but inside, I was still dealing with the pain and betrayal. 4 years passed without any communication from my family. I'd hear snippets of information from old family friends. Jake and Melissa got married, they had a baby. Jake started a graphic design business with his college friend Alex. But I tried not to dwell on it. I had my own life to live. Yesterday, Jake showed up at my door. He looked terrible, unshaved, dark circles under his eyes, clothes rumpled. He'd lost weight, his cheeks hollow and his eyes sunken. I almost didn't recognize him. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He broke down crying as soon as he stepped inside. Between sobs, he told me everything. He and Melissa got married 2 years ago and have a 1-year-old son named Tommy. But Melissa hadn't changed. She treated Jake the same way she treated me, putting him down, manipulating him, cheating on him. Jake described how Melissa would mock his artwork, calling it childish doodles. She'd flirt with his clients in front of him, then accuse him of being insecure when he objected. She'd go out for girls' nights that would stretch into weekends, leaving Jake alone with Tommy. The final straw was when he caught her in bed with his best friend and business partner, Alex. Jake had come home early from a business trip to surprise Melissa, only to find them together in the bed he shared with his wife. When confronted, neither Melissa nor Alex showed any remorse. Alex simply said, "Sorry, man, but Melissa and I are in love. You'll get over it." Melissa left Jake for Alex, taking Tommy with her. She's suing for full custody and trying to push Jake out of the business he built with Alex. Jake has no money, no job, and nowhere to go. He came to me as a last resort, asking for help. Part of me wants to tell him, "I told you so," and slam the door in his face. But seeing him so broken down brought back memories of the little boy who used to follow me around. I let him stay the night but told him he needs to leave in the morning. Now I'm torn about what to do next. On one hand, Jake betrayed me in the worst way possible. He knew what Melissa had done to me, yet he still chose to be with her. He cut me out of his life for years, only coming back now that he needs something. On the other hand, he's still my little brother. I remember all the times I protected him when we were kids, how I swore to always look out for him. I'm also worried about Tommy, my nephew who I've never met. The thought of him growing up with Melissa as his primary caregiver makes my stomach churn. I know firsthand how manipulative and cruel she can be. But getting involved means opening myself up to all the pain and drama I've worked so hard to leave behind. I've finally reached a place of stability in my life. Do I really want to risk that for someone who hurt me so deeply? I don't know what the right thing to do is. Part of me wants to help, to be the big brother I always was. Another part wants to protect myself and the life I've built. I'm torn between family loyalty and self-preservation, between compassion and justified anger. Am I the asshole for not wanting to help my brother after he married my ex-wife? Update 1. It's been a week since Jake showed up at my door, and to say it's been a roller coaster would be an understatement. After my last post, I spent a sleepless night wrestling with what to do. The next morning, fueled by coffee and a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name, I told Jake he could stay for a few days while he figured things out. I made it clear this wasn't a long-term solution, but I couldn't bring myself to throw him out on the street. Over the next few days, Jake filled me in on more details of his life with Melissa. It was like watching a replay of my own marriage, but somehow even worse. Apparently, Melissa isolated him from his friends and family, including me, early in their relationship. She convinced him that I was just jealous and toxic, and that cutting me out was for the best. Jake now realizes how manipulative this was, but at the time he was too infatuated to see it. He told me about their whirlwind romance, how Melissa had pursued him aggressively after our divorce. She'd show up at his college campus, surprising him with lavish gifts and wild weekend getaways. Jake said he felt special, chosen. Melissa told him he was more mature, more exciting than me. It was everything a 22-year-old wanted to hear. Their son, Tommy, was born a year into their marriage. Jake showed me pictures. The kid looks just like him, with the same mop of curly hair I had as a child. It's clear Jake adores his son. He teared up talking about Tommy's first steps, his first words. The pain in his voice when he talked about being separated from Tommy was palpable. Jake's business with Alex had been doing well until recently. They specialized in branding for tech startups and had built a solid reputation in the Minneapolis entrepreneurial scene. Jake handled the creative side, while Alex managed the business aspects. It seemed like the perfect partnership until Melissa came between them. Melissa's affair with Alex had been going on for months before Jake caught them. Looking back, Jake said there were signs: late-night strategy meetings, hushed phone conversations, inside jokes he wasn't a part of. But he trusted his wife and his best friend. He never imagined they would betray him so completely. When Jake caught them together, Melissa and Alex were completely unapologetic. Alex, who had been Jake's best friend since their freshman year of college, simply said, "Sorry, man, but Melissa and I are in love. You'll get over it." Melissa laughed and told Jake he should have seen it coming, that he was never man enough for her. Melissa took Tommy and moved in with Alex the next day. She's now trying to force Jake out of the business, claiming he's unstable and unfit to be involved. She's also seeking full custody of Tommy, allowing Jake only supervised visits. She's using Jake's current lack of stable housing and income against him in court. Jake is a mess. He blames himself for not listening to me about Melissa's true nature. He's depressed and struggling to function. Some days he can barely get out of bed. I'm worried about his mental state, especially when he talks about feeling like a failure as a husband and father. I'm still angry about what Jake did, but seeing him like this is hard. I've been trying to get him to eat regularly and take care of himself. I even reached out to a lawyer friend of mine, Lisa, for advice on Jake's custody situation. Lisa and I dated briefly a couple years ago. And while it didn't work out romantically, we've remained good friends. She's appalled by Melissa's behavior and has offered to represent Jake pro bono. Our parents called me yesterday. They apologized for not believing me about Melissa and asked if they could come visit. I'm conflicted about this. On one hand, I'm still hurt by their dismissal of my feelings years ago. The memory of Mom telling me I was just bitter still stings. On the other hand, Jake could use all the support he can get right now. Plus, a small part of me misses them, despite everything. I never thought I'd be in this position, helping the brother who betrayed me fight against the ex-wife who cheated on me. Life has a twisted sense of humor sometimes. I find myself fluctuating between sympathy for Jake and residual anger about his betrayal. One moment I'm comforting him as he cries about missing Tommy. The next, I'm fighting the urge to yell at him for not listening to me in the first place. Last night, Jake had a nightmare. I found him in the guest room, thrashing and calling out for Tommy. As I shook him awake, for a moment, all I saw was my little brother, scared and needing my help. But then reality crashed back in, and all the complicated emotions returned. I'm still not sure what the long-term plan is here. Jake can't stay with me forever, but I also can't just throw him out on the street. He needs to find a job, a place to live, and fight for custody of his son. It's a long road ahead, and I'm not sure how much of it I want to be involved in. Part of me wants to help Jake get back on his feet, if only for Tommy's sake. I can't bear the thought of that little boy being raised by Melissa and Alex. But another part of me is screaming to protect myself, to not get sucked back into the drama I worked so hard to escape. I'm trying to take it one day at a time, but it's exhausting. The past and present are colliding in ways I never expected, and I'm not sure how to navigate it all. Any advice on how to proceed would be appreciated. How do you help someone who hurt you so deeply? How do you balance family obligation with self-preservation? I feel like I'm drowning in a sea of ethical dilemmas and emotional turmoil. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and the situation has evolved in ways I never anticipated. I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It's been invaluable during this challenging time. Jake has been staying with me this whole time. It hasn't been easy, but I can see he's trying. He's been going to job interviews and meeting with lawyers to discuss his custody case. He's also been seeing a counselor to work through his depression and the trauma from his relationship with Melissa. It's slow progress, but it's something. Our parents did come to visit. It was awkward, to say the least. There were a lot of tears and apologies. They admitted they should have listened to me about Melissa and regretted pushing me away. Dad broke down, saying he felt like he failed both his sons. Mom couldn't stop apologizing, alternating between hugging me and fussing over Jake like he was a child again. While I appreciated their apology, years of hurt don't disappear overnight. We had some heated discussions about the past, things that had been left unsaid for too long. It was painful but necessary. We're taking small steps to rebuild our relationship. They call more often now, and we're planning a family dinner next month. The custody battle with Melissa has gotten ugly. She's making all sorts of false accusations against Jake, claiming he's unstable and unfit to be a father. She's even tried to suggest that Jake was abusive, twisting innocent events into sinister narratives. It's infuriating to watch, especially knowing how she operates. My friend Lisa, the lawyer, has been a huge help. She's been guiding Jake through the legal process and helping him gather evidence to counter Melissa's claims. We've collected character witnesses, including Jake's old professors and clients, to testify about his work ethic and character. Lisa seems cautiously optimistic about our chances. There was an incident last week that really shook Jake. He had a supervised visit with Tommy at a park. Melissa showed up unexpectedly with Alex, claiming they were just happening to be there. She spent the entire visit trying to get Tommy to call Alex Daddy. Jake was devastated. It took everything in me not to drive over there and give Melissa a piece of my mind. When Jake came home that day, he was a wreck. He locked himself in the guest room and wouldn't come out for hours. I could hear him crying through the door. When he finally emerged, his eyes were red and puffy. He looked at me and said, "I can't lose my son. I just can't." It was a stark reminder of what's really at stake here. On a more positive note, Jake has been reconnecting with some old friends from college. They've been supportive and have even offered to help him find work. One friend, Chris, owns a small design agency and has offered Jake some freelance projects. It's not much, but it's a start. It's good to see Jake building a support system outside of just me. Jake has also been trying to reconnect with some of his old clients. Many of them were upset when they thought Jake had abandoned the projects he was working on. Once they learned the truth about what happened with Melissa and Alex. Several have reached out offering to work with Jake again. It's a small victory, but an important one for Jake's confidence and financial situation. As for me, this whole situation has stirred up a lot of old feelings and resentments I thought I'd dealt with. I've realized I still have a lot of anger towards Melissa, and by extension, towards Jake for not believing me. There are moments when I look at Jake and all I can see is his betrayal. Other times I see my little brother who needs my help. I've started journaling to help process my emotions. It's bringing up a lot of memories, both good and bad. I wrote about the time Jake and I built a treehouse in our backyard and how proud we were when we finally finished it. I also wrote about the day I found out he was dating Melissa and the gut-wrenching pain I felt. It's a strange mix of nostalgia and hurt. Despite everything, I can see glimpses of the old Jake, the little brother I used to be close to. The other day, we were eating dinner, and he made a silly joke, just like he used to when we were kids. For a moment, it felt like old times. But then reality set in, and I remembered everything that's happened. It makes me wonder if there's a chance for us to repair our relationship. But then I remember the betrayal, and I'm not sure if I can ever fully trust him again. My dog, Max, has been a surprising source of comfort through all this. He seems to sense when either Jake or I are having a tough day and will come lay his head on our laps. There's something soothing about petting him and focusing on something other than our problems for a while. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. Jake is making progress, slowly but surely. I'm cautiously optimistic about his custody case, but I know Melissa won't go down without a fight. There are good days and bad days, moments of hope mixed with periods of frustration and doubt. I'm still not sure what the future holds for me and Jake, or for our family as a whole. Can you really rebuild trust after such a massive betrayal? Is it possible to forgive without forgetting? These are questions I grapple with daily. But for now, I'm trying to focus on the present, on helping Jake get back on his feet and fighting for his son. The rest, I suppose, will have to wait. Update 3. It's been 3 months since Jake first showed up at my door, and sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed. I wanted to give one final update on the situation. The biggest news is that Jake won shared custody of Tommy. It was a hard-fought battle, but with Lisa's help and some damning evidence of Melissa's behavior, the judge ruled in Jake's favor. He now has Tommy every other week and for extended periods during holidays. The first time Jake brought Tommy to my house was surreal. This little boy, my nephew who I'd never met, was suddenly running around my living room, fascinated by Max and asking a million questions. Tommy has Jake's curly hair and our mom's green eyes. Watching Jake with his son, it's clear how much they love each other. Tommy calls me Uncle Mark now, which feels strange but nice. Jake has moved out of my place and into a small apartment nearby. He found a job at a local design firm. It's not as prestigious as his old company, but it's a start. Some of his old clients have started working with him again, and he's slowly rebuilding his portfolio. He's talking about maybe starting his own agency someday. It's good to see him having goals again. Melissa didn't take the custody ruling well. She's been making threats about appealing the decision and has been difficult about following the custody schedule. Last week, she was 2 hours late dropping Tommy off. with no explanation. Jake is documenting everything, just in case we need to go back to court. Alex, Jake's former best friend, reached out to apologize. Apparently, Melissa has already started treating him the same way she treated Jake and me. He wanted to make amends and offered to give Jake back his share of their old business. Jake told him to keep it. He's starting fresh and doesn't want any reminders of that part of his life. As for me and Jake's relationship, it's complicated. We're talking more, and there are moments when it feels like old times. The other day, we took Tommy fishing at the lake where we used to go as kids. Watching Jake teach Tommy how to bait a hook, I felt a rush of nostalgia and affection. But the trust isn't fully there yet. Jake has apologized numerous times for not believing me about Melissa and for the pain he caused. I can see he's genuinely remorseful, but it's going to take time to heal those wounds. We're trying, though. We have a standing weekly dinner where we catch up and are slowly rebuilding our bond. Our parents have been trying to mend fences, too. They've been supportive of Jake through the custody battle and have made efforts to spend time with me as well. Mom comes over once a week to have coffee and chat. Dad and I have started going to baseball games together again, like we did when I was a kid. It's still awkward sometimes, but it's getting better. This whole experience has taught me a lot about forgiveness and family. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to forget what happened, but I'm trying to move forward. Jake is still my brother, despite everything. We may never be as close as we once were, but I think we can build a new kind of relationship. As for Melissa, I hope I never have to see her again. But with Tommy in the picture, I know that's unlikely. I'm working on setting boundaries and not letting her manipulations affect me anymore. It's a work in progress, but I'm getting better at it. Life is messy and complicated. People make mistakes, sometimes big ones. I'm learning that it's possible to forgive without forgetting, to support without enabling, and to love without losing yourself in the process. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Jake is doing better, Tommy is thriving, and our family is slowly healing. It's not perfect, but it's progress. And right now, that's enough.